When you hear the word wetland, what do you picture? Maybe some birds, maybe some marshes. But in India, there's so much more than that. And with the 2026 World Wetlands Day really zeroing in on cultural heritage, India is this perfect, powerful example of how these ecosystems are just woven into the very soul of a nation. They're not just habitats, they are literally living history.
So to really get why the crisis facing India's wetlands is such a big deal, you first have to see them for what they are. This isn't just about ecology, it's about a living heritage. For centuries, they've been part of the country's cultural, spiritual, and economic life, shaping communities and traditions in a profound way.
There's this one idea that just nails it. It says that wetlands are both habitat and heritage. See, they're not just spaces for wildlife to live. They are the very cradle for human communities, a place that has nurtured traditions and livelihoods for generation after generation. They are absolutely essential to our social well-being.
I mean, just look at this. In Tamil Nadu, for centuries, communities have built these amazing irrigation tanks they call kulams. And these aren't just ponds. They're these incredible cascading networks that do more than just water crops. They sustain entire villages. It's this beautiful harmony between human ingenuity and the natural world.
And this isn't just a one-off thing. Travel over to Kerala's Wayanad region and you'll find these canales, shallow wells, some of them more than 200 years old. They are the absolute heart of the community. Yeah, they provide water for daily life, but they're also central to sacred rituals and festivals. So they're not just wells, they are cultural keystones. So we see their immense value, right? They're this incredible living heritage, which of course raises a really urgent and honestly a troubling question. If these wetlands are so obviously vital, why on earth are they disappearing at such a terrifying pace?
And that's the central conflict of this whole story. Despite everything they give us, India's wetlands are some of the most threatened ecosystems in the country. They're just caught in this difficult crossfire between land, water, and our constant push for development.
Get ready for this number. 40%. That's not a typo. Nearly half of India's wetlands have just vanished in the last 3 decades alone. Think about that. That's a staggering loss of ecological and cultural wealth, literally wiped off the map in a single generation. It's a silent crisis happening right under our noses.
And you might think, well, there must not be any laws to protect them. But that's not it at all. India has frameworks like the 2017 Wetlands Rules. The problem isn't the law itself, it's the enforcement. There's this huge gap between what's written down on paper and what's actually happening on the ground. The rules are there, but way too often, they just get ignored.
So okay, what's really driving all this destruction? Well, you can boil it down to 4 major threats. First up, you've got encroachment. Wetlands just being paved over for buildings and roads. Then there's pollution, with sewage and industrial waste literally choking the life out of them. Third, the natural flow of water is getting blocked up by things like dams. And finally, there's a lack of institutional muscle. The agencies that are supposed to protect them are often underfunded and just not equipped to do the job.
Okay, I'm going to throw a bit of a sciencey word at you, but it's super important to get this. Eutrophication. Basically, it's what happens when all that pollution overloads a wetland with too many nutrients. It's like force-feeding an ecosystem until it collapses. This process just chokes out all the biodiversity and ruins the wetland's natural ability to clean water or prevent floods. It's a total system failure.
All right, the situation is serious, I know. But here's the good news. It is absolutely not hopeless. In fact, there's a really clear blueprint for how to turn this whole thing around. It just requires a big shift in thinking, moving away from these small isolated projects and towards a really coordinated nationwide program of revival.
And here it is. This is the path forward, broken down into 5 clear, doable steps. First, you have to secure the boundaries, make their protection official. Second, you've got to treat wastewater before it ever reaches these systems. Third, we have to think bigger, protecting the entire water system, not just the wetland itself. Fourth, and this is a big one, we have to start integrating wetlands into our disaster planning. And finally, none of this works unless we build up the skills and the institutions to actually make it all happen. So that first step, securing the boundaries, how do you actually do that? Well, it's not about some bureaucrat just drawing lines on a map. It's about this brilliant combination of old and new, using modern satellite mapping and combining it with the traditional knowledge of local communities on the ground. The people who actually know these lands best.
And that brings us to that crucial idea of wetlands and disaster planning. Just look at this comparison. We're so used to gray infrastructure, right? Big concrete dams, seawalls. They're super expensive, and they usually only do one thing. But wetlands, they're nature-based infrastructure. They are natural sponges that protect us from floods and storms, and they purify our water and support life. They're cost-effective, multi-purpose powerhouses.
And finally, let's be real. None of this works without people. That's why Step 5 is so critical. We need something like a national mission to train a whole new generation of wetland managers. And we're not just talking about park rangers here. These people need to be experts in everything from ecology and GIS mapping to environmental law and, crucially, community engagement. Investing in people is the real key to long-term success.
So this brings us to what might be the most important part of the entire solution. You see, restoring India's wetlands, it's not a job for one government department. It's not a task for a small group of activists. It is a shared responsibility. It requires every single one of us.
The central idea here is something called a societal pact. It sounds kind of formal, I know, but all it really means is a shared promise. It's a commitment from government, industry, cities, and regular citizens to all pull in the same direction, to work together toward one common goal: healthy, thriving wetlands for everyone.
So what does that pact actually look like? Well, it means governments have to step up and actually enforce the laws they write. It means cities have to stop seeing wetlands as convenient wastelands and start seeing them as precious assets. Industry has a huge role: prevent pollution at the source. Researchers have to deliver the science and the training. And what about us, the citizens? Our role is to be the defenders and the stewards of our local wetlands, protecting them as our shared heritage.
And the ultimate goal? The vision for the future? It's captured perfectly in this quote. We don't want our wetlands to become sterile museum pieces, roped off and lifeless. The goal is to see them restored as what they've always been: thriving, working ecosystems that are vital to our economy, our culture, and our collective future.
So, we've seen how these incredible places are a vital link to India's past, but also absolutely essential for its future. And that leaves us with a final question, one for everyone watching to really think about. What role will you play to make sure the wetlands in your community become a vibrant part of our future and not just another forgotten piece of our history?